into details because I don't know much of the details. But I know that, fatherhood, sometimes even a stepfather is actually, the children could change their surnames, if I'm not mistaken, to their stepfather's name. And I love the Damara culture, where actually, until you marry that woman, for as long as you have not married that woman, the children that you have with her would be under the surname of the mother.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It's still like a patriarchal system, but it's still, at least it's better that way, because really there are fathers out there that would, their identity is carried over by the children that they do not support.
Exactly.
So for me, I find it ridiculous. But I really like, in our culture, so when you're married to a different man, and I think it's the paternal family that kind of come to kind of claim you over, because that one is not your father. So that's how I ended up there. But then I remember that day when I was going on holiday, that my grandmother actually said, you can go now and stay with your mother and rest. I remember very well. She said that to me. And I felt the relief, because deep down I was also going and wasn't coming back. I didn't want to come back, especially now that when I went back home after the school closed and I did not get my certificate, nobody was willing to pay for that. My grandmother couldn't, because she didn't have money to, but generally nobody wanted to pay for that book. My mother was a teacher, by the way, and she used to support me, sending money and all that. But in this instance, somehow, nobody was willing to pay for the book. So I was going and not coming back. Also, that was my objective. And when I went, my mother also, I told her, and actually she came back to Oshikuyu with me, and she paid for the book, and I got my certificate. I was number 1, by the way. I was the first in class. Imagine if I had not paid that book, I would have repeated the class that I had done very well.
Extremely well to be number 1.
Yeah, so then I ended up changing schools and homes. I was so happy. Like I unfortunately, I do remember, and I regret this, moving to my mother. I found my cousin who grew up like all her life, from I think when she was 6, she moved with my mother in exile, and she always lived with her, and other family members that were staying there, and how I was being treated back in where I grew up. I wanted to impose the same. I wanted to treat people the way, because then it was my mother,
Yeah, I know you always feel that way.
My goodness, I regret that up to date. I know I didn't even get a chance to do that much, because it was only 2 years later, less than 2 years. I spent 1 full year and a half with my mother, then she died. So she died in May the 9th, 2000, and that was I went back to square one, basically. It was heartbreaking. I was destroyed. Even up to now, there are moments I think of it, and I think of the people that kind of took me away, because I actually wanted to stay. My mother had told me to take care of my sisters. She called me, I remember, just when I moved, I think like 3 years later, 3 months later, she called me to tell me that she might not make it. She might be not the forever living person. And that if anything happens to her, that she would want me to take care of my sisters and so forth. And unfortunately, when she died, and I was telling the relatives about this, and I was just 11 years old, nobody believed me. Nobody was listening.
Who will listen to you?
Yeah, so I had to move from my stepdad, although I really wanted to stay with my stepdad and my siblings. Because I was so at peace. We were living in like a townish. In Namibia we call them settlements. So we had water at home, we had electricity, we had television. We didn't have to do all this manual labor that we would do. So I really didn't want to go back to that life.
Did you go back to school?
No. This time my maternal family took me. I still didn't want them to take me because they were heavy on alcohol. So I witnessed. In fact, when I would go to see my maternal grandparents, whom I love dearly, and I think this is what also kind of resonates, or that it's something that I always realize, that where there is love, despite like them being alcoholic, my grandmother in particular, despite her drinking behavior, I knew she loved me like unconditionally, and I was rather happy living with her or living at her home before, like when I was now living at my paternal family. I preferred going to my where there was like people were like very religious, grounded, like a Christian and so forth. On the other hand, my grandmother was, they had a shebeen at home. There was always people coming in to drink otombo. They would drink and there would be quarrels, but there was always love to an extent. I knew I was loved. I know I was loved when I was there. I was part of the family, like fully. So anyway, this time when I lived a much more comfortable life with my mother, my stepdad, and my siblings, I really didn't want to go back to that reality. Neither did I want to go back to my paternal family, nor did I want to live with my family that was, drinking most of the time. My maternal family, that is, So, I ended up going back. Remember, and in fact, I went to another village called Oshikuyu, which is just next to the Oshikuyu. There are 3 Oshikuyus, Oshikuyu A, B, C, A, B, and C. So I and this actually the worst time was when I had to leave there, because then there was violence. And there was just so much, and as I grew, I could even understand more things than when I was a child and living, and sometimes, of course, I knew I wasn't treated like others, but there were things that I didn't necessarily understand. But in this case, for example, my aunt was like regularly abused. Like
your aunt is a sister to your mom.
My sister to my mom. I had to choose when I was now forced to move away from my stepdad. I had to choose between my grandmother, another aunt, and another aunt. And to be honest, the force came with the funds that comes when a child has lost. My mother was a teacher, so then there was this annuitant fees that used to come, and everyone wanted a share of that. And so, but then I was told to choose between the 3. the person that I chose was at least the relatively best.
Okay.
But then unfortunately she was being abused by her ex-husband. Now they are no more. They were by the time husband.
Okay. So you lived with them and they were abusing the stepfather used to abuse.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call him my stepdad or anything like that. It's just a jerk out there. So my aunt's husband, yeah. So he was very, very abusive. I saw him, hitting women, just like, not even just my aunt, but generally in that village. Anybody that disagrees with him and is a woman, then he would beat them up. So
he had a mentality of looking down on women. Like
and in the coward, basically, he was, and sadly, what is very, very saddening in these communities is that, they see violence, gender-based violence in particular, as a private matter.
Yeah.
So nobody really was coming through, even when they know that this man is, any man could fight him and he would, but then they didn't want to bother. Like, they didn't want, because it's like a private matter.
It's so sad because I went through the same thing. My uncle, where I grew up, I will say he raised me. So when they got married, because I was living with one of my aunts, when she's the one who fought for me to go to school, she's the one who told my mom that this child needs to go to school, you can bring her here in Ondangwa, I can stay with her, and the principal is my friend. So I was living with her, but then my uncle got married. So then they were like, no, okay, now you can go to these ones who got married. But alcohol destroys a lot of families.
Absolutely.
That's why I always advise, if you drink alcohol and it turns you into a beast, don't bother taking it.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, me seeing what my family members become when they are drunk, I never drank, like, up to now. After I witnessed this, like, my maternal family was never like abusive whatsoever. But basically alcohol makes them like fools, if I can say like that. And I didn't like that. And of course there's a lot of arguments when they are drunk than anything else. So I promised myself I never would like to be like my family. So since that, I know when we were children, we were actually forced, because of poverty and because, otombo brew that they made, we would make onakwi with that brew, and that's what we would eat. But other than that, I never drank alcohol. So up to now, and I don't see a need. I never craved in my life to drink alcohol, and for that, actually, that's why I get to travel a lot as well, because I don't spend money on alcohol. Alcohol is very expensive.
Very expensive, and I'm one of people who spends money on alcohol. For me, it's a must. I have this thing of, I need to have wine. I need to have a glass of wine. A day can be exhausting, and when I'm watching TV, I just want that glass of wine. But the fear that I have with people is, and I told myself when I was now deciding, I always desired to get married, but there's one thing that I never desired in my life, is being married by a drunkard. I never desired to be married by a drunkard. It's something that scares me up to today. It's something that really, really scares me. People who drinks and you turn into somebody else. I feel so, I don't get it. I drink. You will never find me changing into somebody who is going to fight. Why should you drink and then you go and fight? To me, how I take alcohol is something that was supposed to relax you and make you sleep, because my alcohol makes me sleep. So if
My sister.
because when you are tired, sometimes you just want to sit and you don't want to think about anything. You sit, you go straight, you sleep. But what I know is, one of my cousins told me that the reason why he stopped drinking is because when he drinks, he gets so aggressive. And I really understood his point that if it's making you to be aggressive, there's no need for you to take it. And this is what people don't want to get. In bars, in club, I have witnessed people fighting, people beating each other. The next morning, you can't even remember what happened. You wake up with a scar. So I have witnessed my uncle really taking a plate and throwing it to the wife.
Imagine.
So at some point, I was discouraged of getting married, because there was a point I didn't even want children, because I didn't want my children to experience any sort of violence. I didn't want things of a husband. I really didn't want such things. God knows how I ended up being married. Anyway, that could be a story for another day. But for real, I really vowed to myself that should I ever get a man who drinks, should I ever get a man who drinks and become violent when they are drunk, it will be the ending point.
Absolutely understandable.
It will be the end point, because I have seen her being beaten with food just like that. Somebody's throwing you a plate for what? Just because the person is drunk and they feel now they are macho and they are all that.
I know. I think there is a very big role that witnessing this violence.
It does.
But one thing I also am shocked of is that the abuser of my aunt, that is the husband of the time, didn't drink.
He didn't?
No.
I thought he's doing that because
he didn't drink. Of course, he drank maybe, I don't know, but I know he didn't drink beer, he didn't drink tombo. He drank epaka, which is like so I don't know. He was basically violent. I don't know
that
where
means just
the violence
by nature. It's just a mentality. Then because if the person is fighting without taking any substance, then that person is a very scary person.
He is. I swear. Maybe now the fear is not coming out as I speak about this man. In fact, he butchered my grandmother. When my aunt decided to finally leave, he actually went to my grandmother's house and slashed her with a panga, to the point that people thought she was dead. Yeah.
And he didn't take
that.
anything.
No.
Which one is this one?
And this is where the justice system in Namibia makes me so mad. Because that person up to date is free. I know he had fled into Angola, and for that reason, that was the excuse that they couldn't trace him, they couldn't find him. But he returned at some point. Unfortunately, by the time he was found, my grandmother was gone. She had passed away. And to be honest, the impact of that incident had so much to do with her, because she fell at one point and she broke her leg, and she was already because at one point she was beaten with a rim of the bicycle and cut with the panga. So she became, I don't know, like really, anyway, she died. And by the time the police could find this man, they needed witnesses of the abuse. My grandmother being the one the most affected, because she was really slashed with pangas and all that, and she was hospitalized for like a month or more, because she had even broken her arm, or he broke her arm. And unfortunately, because she had died, they said there is no case, so they arrested him and prosecuted him as not guilty. So, and I think this has so much to do with my personality today. Like, I would do anything to protect my family, and in the best way, of course, that I can. And thank goodness, since that incident, there wasn't any other major one that I have heard of, at least. But I'm ready to, because unfortunately I cannot trust the justice system in Namibia at this stage. I don't at all. But it's a journey that I watched, and I promised myself, and that's how I actually studied in good enough to go out of that home, to go to hostel. My promise to myself was that I would study to make sure that I don't stay in that house longer. So I was grade 7, 8, 9, grade 8, 9, 10. Grade 8, 9, 10, I had to spend 3 years with this family in this abusive household. And I just had to make sure that I do well enough. Leave. I never went back after that.
What is really confusing me or surprising me or shocking me is, how can someone, you don't drink, you don't take weed, what gives you courage just to stand up?
Absolutely, and slash somebody with
someone without fear, no.
Yeah, I also wonder,
because I will understand if you are on high or maybe drunk or something. So that means when these women are suffering from abusive husbands and partners and whatnot, some of them don't take.
I swear, this man, I know I can't, because I wasn't always around him, so, but I can almost guarantee you that he didn't take any substance. Not alcohol, not drugs. Like, he did everything in his conscious mind or state of mind.
Did he hated the wife or what?
I don't know. It's so funny, because when I met this, as I was being introduced to him by my aunt, he looked like the most friendliest person. And that's why I'm very conscious of everyone, not just people who are rude, but even those, because he was the most, in fact, that also sort of contributed to how I ended up choosing to live with my aunt, this aunt, over anyone else. Because I felt he was so nice, he was smiling all the time, very friendly. I swear it took I think a day. In fact, I think it was the day that I moved in with them that I saw him beating my aunt, or heard at least him, and I couldn't believe it, because I remember I was sharing a room with he had daughters, 2 daughters and a son.
From your aunt?
From another woman.
Okay.
And we were sharing a room, and it was a little bit further away from their room. But then I remember waking up in the middle of the night because I could hear screams. And I was asking them, what is happening? I never imagined than it was my aunt being beaten. Because I never lived in an abusive home. Where I lived, yes, I was treated differently, like in terms of what I get to be allowed to eat, and like not having shoes or whatever. But I've never lived in an abusive household ever. And so I never imagined that an adult could actually be beaten. Like, I never. And yeah, that day when I asked my whatever they are, the kids of
you can't even say your cousins.
No, they are not my cousins. I'm not related to them. So then, yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't believe it when they were saying it was my aunt being beaten. I couldn't believe it, but yeah, it happened, and it really had. I think that was another aspect of or contributors to how I wanted to live my life after that experience. I never wanted to you never know, but I promised myself I would never allow anybody to do that to me.
True. So, personally now, will you want to get married though?
No.
No, but I mean,
no.
And there are people who are nice.
I know, and I have met them. I have loved people that are nice, and I would love them over and over again. But I do not believe that marriage is the only way of, for example, establishing a family. Mm-hmm. It's not the only way of living happily ever after. I do not want to make promises to somebody that I would love them for the rest of my life, because I don't know about that. Mm-hmm. And I would never want to tell somebody that. So, I mean, under particular circumstances, maybe I would consider marriage. But at this point of my life, and I'm not any younger, I guess. I'm 33 now. But there wasn't a point, especially, of course, when we were kids, we growing up and, just seeing, once you finish high school or first degree, you get married. That's all we were exposed to. Mm-hmm. But now that I have lived and experienced life, and I have seen so much of it, and I have also seen my friends who looked happily ever after going through things. I think I'm better. I'm okay. I'm happy. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable not being married.
So it's not because of what you went through as a child?
It definitely contributes also to that, because I really, when I saw that, I'm feminist, I'm unapologetically feminist, especially after that I have witnessed, and how women are treated in the society, especially in the community where I come from. So I definitely, that also had an impact on my life and choice to not wanting to be married. And I know life changes, plans change, and I'm open, but definitely, like right now, since long time ago, I think even since that experience of violence, I decided, and I have been openly talking about, not wishing to get married, or at least not, desiring to get married. Yeah,
I can imagine. So, one last question though. I know we are almost at the end.
Yes.
So, one last question. what will you tell somebody that is going through abuse, or either as a child, or as the, how do you call it, the person who is being abused themselves, or just witnessing as children? What will you?
My heart goes out to them, absolutely, because I know that man never ever laid a hand on me. He never physically abused me, but I was as much, affected, perhaps not physically, but mentally, emotionally. I had trauma. Like, I really was so scared. Like, every time I hear him, like, I could tell when he's angry that he's about to beat somebody. I would, like, most of the time run away. And I can just imagine for somebody who is being physically abused, them like they are, in this position, or unfortunate situation. So I would say, get out if you are being abused. It's not worth it. It's not worth your life. Like, life is so good. Life is so good without them.
Yeah.
And you will have support. Even if it's your parents telling you to, stay in,
yeah.
don't, because it's not worth your life. You may end up losing your life just, because you stayed longer. So my heart really goes out to the people that are going through this. And really, I'm always keen to support people. Like, I'm privileged enough, not perhaps in the like, I don't have cash, flowing in all the time whatsoever, but at least I'm in a very financially sustainable position, and therefore I'm always ready to assist with the little that I can. If that person, for example, doesn't have any sort of support, and they are staying in for finances, maybe, let's say, nappies for their kids, and maybe their father, the children's father, the husband partner, is the one that is taking care of them. I am ready to take up that role, provide nappies, if that's what it has to take, but get out,
run.
And the person who is abusing, we are coming after you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. It's not your property, for God's sake. It's a human being, just with dignity as you do have, and therefore do not lay your hands on somebody, because they are, the pain, the trauma, everything that comes with that is, it will take time to heal. Yeah. So yeah, that's my message. I don't even know. I'm trying not to be emotional.
No, I do get the point.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much for agreeing to talk to us. And this comes to the end of our talk today. And this is what I have to say as well, that abuse is not an option. I know, like what she says, sometimes people are there because they have a hope that the person will change, but sometimes people don't change. And if they have to change, let them change when they are very far away from you. Do forgive them, but hey, it's not a matter of starting, it's a matter of finishing, by the way. So we all start with the difficulties, but we need to make a choice that we end with good things. So this is Ups and Downs of Life in Namibia. It's me, Yalo, and this was Fenny, and it's up to next time. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
So
please share,
yes,
like, comment, and subscribe.
Subscribe for more and more and more videos. So next time we'll have somebody who is a gospel artist. So I'm just chasing him. He agreed to be on the interview though. So I have to chase him probably next month. Since I'm so busy, sometimes I don't get time to interview people. So until next time. So